the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Hi, this is Paul Sickle.
Hey, Paul. Eventful week. Lots going on. Milwaukee Brewers in the National League Championship Series starts tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we're maybe going to the World Series.
Well, let's first things first. But that's
what does Nate Silver think?
What's the likelihood?
I haven't checked recently.
Yeah, I think that's what was it last week with like 18% chance or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, well,
but anyway, they're one of four that are still standing, and they have home field throughout the National League Series, so things are looking good.
Now let's talk Turkey. Just in case we forget that woman's name. We had some interesting news from the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association.
Yeah, so there's that. I mean, there's some polling stuff that came out this week, but there was yesterday. It was revealed that Nancy Douglas, who's the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association board chair elect,
she's the star of the anti-Randy Bryce ad.
Yeah, she was
the same woman.
Came across as just a normal Wisconsin citizen, just voicing her grievances against a guy like Randy Bryce, and obviously not revealed in this campaign commercial that she's going to be head of the WBA, the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association.
Right. So our friends at One Wisconsin Now, good
Scott Ross and company,
absolutely. They decided to put the word out.
They put some
resign.
Yeah, they put some pressure on and made it known, who she was and what capacity she was in when she was doing this ad. And by the end of the day yesterday, she had resigned before even taking her new position. So,
that's good.
So that's a good thing. I mean, I can only imagine if you had some left of center, some liberal person who is posing as just a normal Wisconsinite
in a Tammy Baldwin ad,
like a Tammy Baldwin
Randy
ad,
Bryce ad,
or an anti-Scott Walker ad or something like that. I mean, the right wing nut jobs in this town would lose
their mind.
They would use the majority of their airtime on the radio to just go
That's
after
kind of
these
why I
people.
wanted to talk about this first. It's honestly Nancy Douglas. Really, the entire WBA, though, has to be questioned. It's not just one person. She's elected to the head of it, and it turns out that WBA knew she was going to be in a political ad, and they only asked for her resignation after it was called out by One Wisconsin Now.
Well, after the pressure. And the initial statement, I believe, was that, she's acting in the capacity of a private citizen, and all our board members are allowed opinions, and that's all fair. But she was not just a board member; she was the incoming chair of the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association.
From newspapers across the state were getting fired or disciplined, because they signed Scott Walker's recall petition. Absolutely, right.
That same standard apparently doesn't apply here.
Right? They really. People who had news jobs that had nothing to do with, they'd be like a cameraman at Channel 58 and recall petition. Are you kidding? What does a cameraman have to do with
fire that guy
policy? Not even, even people, you could say he takes a different angle shot. They literally had the secretary so-and-so signed a recall petition. People with absolutely nothing to do with the editorial content.
Right.
And here we've got, certainly not the political content. Here we have Nancy Douglas, who is actually going to lead the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association. She tells them she's going to be in a political commercial, and they say, "Oh, that's the end of it," and they were fine with that.
Yeah,
that's a good honestly, what's up? What's going on at the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association?
Nothing good.
Just to be clear, this is not just some other entity. This is the company. I know is not the right word.
This is the organization
that represents all your news stations in Wisconsin,
all
your TV news stations,
your TV, your radio, the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association.
They staged most of the debates.
Yeah. There was a controversy earlier this year about how they were handling the Democratic debate.
And they abruptly canceled it?
Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me.
Shady. Again, if the shoe was on the other foot, this would play into this
people still believe, this liberal media.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. It's if the shoe were on the other foot, they would play into this narrative of like, oh, see, it's just another example of the liberal media, blah, 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 you know?
Yeah, the same people who are broadcasting on WTMJ and all the mainstream radio stations.
Exactly.
They are out there complaining about liberal bias in the media when their whole outfit, which kind of runs the media in a way in the state, is being run by a Paul Ryan or Brian-style hack. Clearly a Republican hit job. I mean, and it is really dishonest.
No, it is.
Too.
It is terrible.
I feel like, I mean, it says he chose to withhold his child support rather than saying what he really happened was he fell behind by, like, I think it was $1,200 over the course of years, which is like a really... I mean, yes, it's unfortunate, but you know what? Being cash-strapped is unfortunate. It's not like he wasn't making regular payments.
Well, that's the thing.
And so...
It's all, you know, the merits of the ad, you know, it's obviously, that's a different discussion, but it's still, Well, the Broadcasters Association does oftentimes weigh in and say, well, you know what? We don't think this is truthful, and they will object to ads being aired that are clearly untruthful. Right.
And I would argue that ad against Bryce it's certainly spin.
Oh, for sure.
And
it doesn't provide.
I think it's fair to say it's untruthful.
Well, it doesn't provide any context for.
Right, it's not truthful. It certainly isn't refusing to pay child support systematically. I mean,
like some deadbeat that doesn't give a shit.
In fact, I think she called him a deadbeat, didn't she?
Or
something like that. I mean, that's not only is the WBA allowing their top spokesperson, who now, to their credit, finally resigned after enormous pressure.
Yeah, like I said, the initial reaction was, well, again, she was acting in her capacity as a private citizen. Our members are allowed to have their own views, and then that was not enough to alleviate the controversy.
What this is really a sign of a failure of old media, at least at the local level.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And new media at the local level really winning the day.
Yes.
That's why issues like net neutrality are so important. It's not just so that people can play online poker or something.
Yeah,
like
or binge watch Netflix or something.
Right. Yeah. You know, or download their DVD, you know, or not DVDs, downloads of TV. Okay, you gotta edit.
You sound like an old person.
I mean, you know, download MP3 files or whatever.
Yeah. You're gonna be talking about Napster in a minute.
Wait, isn't that current? All right. Well, all right.
So there's that.
I'm tired, and
so the other.
I remember a time before the internet was ubiquitous.
Yeah.
I was pretty young.
Are you waxing nostalgic on the back when there was
yes, back when there was partiality
GeoCities and AOL.
Well, it was funny. I was just ripping on old media.
Yeah, there is kind of a new old media.
Yeah, but at least we're being honest about my shortfall instead of going off and completely lying about everything.
There's that.
I don't know. I'm pretty disgusted by it. Honestly, this is where we need...
Yeah.
You know, I sure hope that the Crute and them on WRRD were crowing about this. This is where we need... That's progressive radio, 1510 AM, if you're keeping score at home. Little plug for them, I would say. But, you know, podcasts and... it reminds me of just how important net neutrality is.
Yeah, for sure. And it needs to continue to be an issue because the current FCC is obviously not our friend.
Right. So. By the way, speaking of old media or what have you, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel ran a headline yesterday on, and I'm not sure it quite shows bias, but it's interesting. They ran the headline when the poll came out from Marquette that had Walker slightly ahead.
Yeah.
Now, to their credit, they actually didn't characterize it as that. They characterized it as a tight race within the margin of error, which is what this poll showed.
Yeah, that's probably the right way to get it.
But they literally had, as I recall, the same headline that the Marquette press release put out.
So they basically just regurgitated the press release.
I mean, they did no original reporting, or at least no original copy.
I think that's. I think it's like an increasingly common thing because of all the cutbacks that are occurring at newspapers around the country, and there's skeleton staffs now. And so as time goes on, like more and more PR is just masquerading as media.
No, reading these. Part of what bothered me too, though, was that reading these polls in the Journal Sentinel over the years, I always thought that there was some affiliation between the Marquette poll and the Journal Sentinel for Charles Franklin.
Yeah.
They seem to, and Franklin kind of pushes the pro.
There's a kinship there.
Yeah, and I feel like Franklin pushes a slightly conservative-leaning poll, although his accuracy has been generally very good.
Right.
But the Journal had its own poll all of a sudden, like right after, which actually showed Evers with a slightly better result right after the primary. Remember that?
Yeah.
I was really curious as to why the Journal was sponsoring a poll when I thought they already had sponsored their own. Polling with Marquette, because they're always the ones reporting it, like literally.
Well, sure.
As soon as he's out there at the Marquette Law Auditorium announcing his findings. Well, is very favorable to the Republicans' findings recently.
Yeah. But he's doing it with Charles Franklin, who runs the Marquette poll, is releasing it with Mike Goucher, who used to be involved with
Journal
Broadcast Group when that was still a thing.
But he's not affiliated with them at all.
No, he's actually he does work with Marquette and he does stuff on his own.
And Russ Feingold did too. Yeah. And so.
Yeah, so there was a new Marquette poll that came out yesterday, and it shows that amongst likely voters, Scott Walker's up by 1 point. Yeah, and I think the takeaway is really in terms of the makeup of the poll.
Voters, it's 4 points.
Yeah, right.
To Walker,
exactly. But the likely voter poll, I believe it's +3. The sample size is +3 Republican.
And that was the unlikely, or the registered voters.
Yeah, and last time I think it was when they released one in September, I believe it was +2 Democrat.
Which was a lot more similar to their history.
And there's just something doesn't add up, and we dug into it a little bit before we started recording, and it was really around the makeup of the sample around the state. And you identified something in the poll in terms of
this time.
In terms of how the Green Bay numbers look, the Green Bay media market.
Yeah, which is a pretty conservative area, but they had almost a 2-to-1 split to Walker versus 56 to 29%.
And that just seems ridiculous. I mean, when you consider how even
the last Walker re-election wasn't anywhere near that.
Yeah. And even Hillary did better against Trump in that area of the state. So in this environment,
they both got about 40% in that area. I mean, even a little better than 40%. Both of them.
So do we really believe that both Walker's
going to Mary Burke? That is.
Do we really believe that Walker's going to get double the numbers of Tony Evers in this environment? I would call bullshit on that.
When no Republican has done that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something to be said for the red areas becoming redder, the blue areas becoming bluer.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about rural areas, but I mean, we're talking about Green Bay. It's not a tiny area.
Rural. Well, it does include a lot of rural areas.
It does.
Most of the population is not in the rural areas.
Exactly.
It's in Green Bay, Appleton, Oshkosh, Needham, and Nash, all the way down to Fond du Lac.
Right.
So those are much more industrial, small kind of urban areas, strung together, almost a mini megalopolis of small industrial cities.
Yeah.
That added together is a pretty large population base. So yeah, most of those people in that media market are not like agricultural people or small town people exactly. They're small city people maybe, but
so I mean I don't want to be like the what did Karl Rove used to call it when they were correcting the polls? It was
skewing.
So unskewing. I don't want to unskew the polls. However, what I would say is, I mean, the Marquette poll is a pretty young poll, and yet it has had some success. However, it is young and it's been successful in pretty much Republican-favored elections
with high enthusiasm for Republicans.
Exactly. So I don't know.
Now they caught it at the peak of the Kavanaugh stuff, where
there is that, and we haven't touched on that yet. But yeah,
and then they're contradicted, interestingly, by another poll, which also just came out today, which was by NBC.
The NBC Marist poll came out. Yeah,
Evers 10 points ahead.
Yeah,
which really kind of shocked me. Interesting thing was Marquette actually went into the field on the 3rd of October and finished on the 7th, and the NBC Marist went into the field on September 30th, which was, I believe, was the previous Sunday.
Yeah.
And last time the Packers won, and came out of the field on the 3rd.
Yeah.
Or finished being in
so
the
field.
So
the timeline's a little bit different. So you have to take that into account. But I mean,
not much.
Do we really think that there's that much of a difference given those few days?
Well, there's a 1-day actual overlap.
Yeah.
But it's over the course of early in the week was when the NBC. It's interesting that the NBC takes so long to release their thing. NBC.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Maybe they're just waiting on. Maybe it's just timing. I don't know.
No, a friend of mine pointed out that actually NBC Marist tends to actually have more of a Republican lead than the Marquette poll, which is really interesting. But then again, that doesn't mean they know Wisconsin.
Well, and their previous poll in July had Evers up by 13, which was shortly before the Democratic primary took place.
Yeah, so Evers with no name ID.
Yeah.
Basically people just wanting to vote against Walker.
Yeah, it was almost like a generic Democrat versus Walker.
You would follow that he's fallen off a little bit just because the Kavanaugh thing was kicking up, and there's been all this.
There's been all the ads
of Evers.
Yeah.
First, the guy who liked the porn in the classrooms. That one seems to have run its course, though.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fallen flat now. They're moving on to other things.
And now they're saying Evers is going to raise your taxes.
He's going to raise your taxes and
take Wisconsin backwards.
Yep. He's gonna get the unions back in business.
Evers, for his part, has some pretty strong critiques against the roads and schools, but mostly the health care, the pre-existing conditions, and they're totally right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Rebecca Clayfish cut that ad saying, "How dare he say that?" when she was actually wrong. She's technically correct that currently Wisconsinites are protected for pre-existing conditions, but that's because of Obamacare,
there you go,
which she opposed. They never were before then, and there's nothing saying that they will be protected after Trump care passes or after this lawsuit succeeds. The lawsuit is something Walker supports.
Yeah, exactly.
Obamacare.
So the other thing I think we want to touch on is we left off a couple weeks ago. Our last recording was the Kavanaugh stuff. So we were kind of in the throes of the controversy last go around, and it was looking a little dire. And Paul, I don't want to call you out, but I think you were pretty confident that on our last podcast that this thing was not going to happen. And
it said 80% chance.
Yeah,
he's not in the Supreme Court. Blowing his eye wrong.
Lo and behold, Susan Collins voted for, and therefore Joe Manchin.
That's disheartening. I mean, honestly,
51-49. I mean, if those two vote against, the nomination sinks.
So I guess the calculus was like this. Kavanaugh, I guess, really was tight with like the more mainstream Republicans, the Bushies.
Yeah,
and Susan Collins was always very tight with them.
I guess so.
And so Susan Collins has always been very loyal to the Bush family. It's a main thing, you know.
I think this could be the end of Susan Collins, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know if she runs again in 2 years, because she has traditionally benefited from some Democratic support and independents that have supported her, and now this might have burned a bridge that may not be able to be rebuilt. And also, she's not necessarily a friend of more conservative elements of the party. So she may be between a rock and a hard place next go around. I don't know. I mean, 2 years was a long time, but I don't know. She's really kind of put herself in a position to be vulnerable next go around.
So I just didn't see it, and I didn't see that angle. That was the thing. I could understand the Manchin angle, which is that he just wants to get reelected in a very, very Republican state.
Yes.
He feels like he's in a good position, doesn't want to take any chances. And he gave a statement that almost sounded like he was saying that. I mean, without saying quite that. But it was disappointing, but not unexpected.
No, that's not surprising. I think Collins was actually more surprising than Manchin, to be honest.
Quite a bit more. So I would say yes. And who else really dismayed me was Jeff Flake.
Well,
and
and
Bob Corker, these people really don't like Trump. Well, what are they doing?
I think you look at Jeff Flake. I mean, a guy who's an outgoing senator who's got nothing to lose, except I think his primary concern is what he's going to do after his Senate career, and he doesn't want to burn any bridges, so he's just going to go out and he's going to do right by his party, and he's going to find a nice cushy gig and just ride out the rest of his career. That's Jeff Flake right there.
I also think he's tied in with the Bush people.
Yeah, but Jeff Flake has never been a profile in courage. He's just a senator who just was doing his job, and then wasn't a fan of Trump, and then
But he was like a neocon. He was a neocon.
He's not
a neocon in the Trump.
He's not a moderate. I mean, he's a conservative Republican who just clashed with Trump on occasions, and then was probably going to get primaried if he ran again.
To show how ridiculous the system is, though, and I certainly hope the voters think about this, is he was confirmed with basically the equivalent of, a friend of mine broke it down, 51 senators who represent 44% of the nation's population.
Yeah.
And that's I think splitting a Wisconsin in half, because you got half, you got one of each party.
Yeah.
There. And so that was breakdown. And they did that for a president that got just under 46% of the popular vote.
Yeah.
I mean, so it just tells you not only is there something wrong with the culture that enough people would allow this, but even the majority is against this stuff, but they're still prevailing. And this has been going on for a while now, that the right has been prevailing despite having no majority, really.
Well, yeah, exactly. And in that context, I think that it merits...
Explicitly no majority.
Yeah.
Where it's very clearly identified that they really don't have a popular mandate
to
govern, and yet they're still doing this.
Yeah. Well, they're behaving as if they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to make sure we give credit where credit's due in terms of a few key senators who voted the right way, but they may suffer some consequences because of
Joe
it.
Donnelly,
Joe Donnelly in Indiana, Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota, Lisa Murkowski in Alaska.
Claire McCaskill too.
Claire McCaskill. Yeah, I mean these are people that are in vulnerable, in vulnerable situations.
Yeah.
And they may end up losing their job because of this vote, but they chose to do the right thing. And guys like Jeff Flake, who weren't even up for re-election, who were retiring, did not, and that's unfortunate.
Well, I think it was because of his ties to the Bushies. I think it was just like Collins.
Yeah.
It was the same problem there, and I wonder if he wouldn't have gotten Manchin if he wouldn't have had to be the 51st vote.
Well, that's the thing. Is I wonder if Susan Collins had gone the other way, if Manchin would have come along. Because
I think he would have needed one more, because then he would have been the vote that breaks the tie.
Yeah.
Tie, because the tie goes to Pence.
Right.
So I'm pretty sure.
No, but if you would have gotten both Collins and Manchin, it'd been 51-49.
Yeah,
because you already had Murkowski.
Then he would have had to been number 51.
Oh yeah, he didn't want to be the deciding vote. Is what you're saying. Sure.
Right.
Okay.
Had it been, he needed Collins and Flake. Had he had those two, that would have been enough. He probably would have done it.
Yeah. Well, then they probably, like I said,
probably would have 52-48 defeat.
Like I said previously, I think if it were to lose to that extent, I think McConnell would have just pulled it.
The other part that got in my calculus was, I actually thought that the right would probably benefit a little bit from him being voted down.
For sure.
Because they could really crank out the outrage machine.
Because
they would
really
boost the enthusiasm, and the polling actually is starting to indicate that I was right about this, because the polling is just now drifting back toward the Democrats. It peaked over the weekend, but if you look at 538...
When it was in the midst of this,
it's starting to recede somewhat, so the red tide to break the blue wave was really coming into effect, I thought, for a minute, and now it looks like that's subsiding. The blue wave is continuing to roll.
Right. Well, there's the whole. It's about who has the grievance, right? So, like, if for some reason the nomination couldn't have moved forward, either McConnell pulls it off the floor or he just goes down in a straight up vote. They would have had a grievance. They would have used that to just pummel Democrats
and
with.
I think grievance is very important in a midterm.
Absolutely,
when the candidates are a lot less well known.
And now they've won. So honestly, like if Republicans are really holding this up as like this is going to be our saving grace for this election, honestly, like you look at how fast this news cycle has been moving in this last few years. I don't expect this is even going to be on the front page a month from now. There's going to be so much other stuff. There was the journalist that was murdered in Turkey yesterday from the Washington Post contributor. There's so much stuff going on that like Kavanaugh honestly really Kavanaugh's going to be ancient news in a week from now.
Right.
So I mean, this is not going to be the turnout driver that I think they are hoping it's going to be.
Well, especially now that he's on. The question is, does it turn out some of our votes?
Well, that's the hope, right? Is that we have this thing that we have this situation.
Fair-minded men would be outraged, and yet I guess there's good reason to doubt that, though, because if you look at 2016, when Trump was clearly shown to be pretty offensive,
the womanizer that he is, but I would think in terms of history,
they had him on tape saying. Some of the worst stuff.
I know. 1994 and 2006 are the two examples I think to look to compare to this election.
That's weird because 1994 was a Republican wave.
It was.
06 was a Democratic.
But but 94, you have to remember, it was when.
Why are these two similar when they had
because the Republicans were out of power. They had not controlled the House of Representatives in 40 years.
Right.
They had not controlled the Senate for most of that time.
Right.
So it was a historic wave that occurred, and 06 similarly was
wasn't that historic of a wave?
It was pretty resounding victory because they took both the Senate and the House. And
but it wasn't the same. I mean, the Democrats hadn't been out that long.
The Senate they had briefly because Jim Jeffords switched parties, and but it was it went back Republican in 2002.
Yeah, so about a year and a half, right? Okay. So I'm not sure if I follow it 100%. I mean, I think my hope is that it's like the reverse of 2010.
Yeah,
which was even more powerful than either of those other two waves. It really gave us this. Red lock on the Midwest that's crushed unions and really set us back in so many ways. We're still recovering from that election.
We are. We really are.
In some ways, the election Trump was in, the exponent of it. I mean, in a weird way, when you think of voter suppression in Wisconsin, which probably did swing the state. Mm-hmm. I think that in some ways 2010 delivered the White House to Trump in 2016.
Oh, yeah.
If there's any way to get Democratic voters as excited for this as they would be for Obama, that would be a great thing. We say this every midterm.
Pretty much.
That would really be tremendous. So we'll see.
So more to come on that. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more polling data coming out in the weeks ahead.
Yeah.
But lots to look forward to next few weeks. We are less than a month away from Election Day, folks.
All right.
So with that, on that note,
and the Marquette poll wasn't great, but then the NBC poll was pretty encouraging. So contradictory results.
Yeah.
Here.
Check out our Facebook page. We've got both of those polls posted on there.
What do you think the governor's race is really at?
What do I think it's really at? Somewhere between the Marquette poll and the NBC poll.
So you think Evers is maybe just about tied or something?
I'm going to go with if the election were held today, it's +5 Evers.
Okay. All right. I like that.
That's where my head's at.
I don't know what to think. I'd say it's a jump ball.
It'd be
about turnout.
Absolutely.
I just watched the recount.
Only poll that matters is the poll on election day.
I watched recount about the 2000 election. Just now. Really
lots of lessons to be learned there.
Getting ready for this one. All right, with that.
Forward, folks. Forward.